Welcome to the Stay Ready Real Estate Podcast, where we stay ready so you don't have to get ready. I'm Emeka, your host, and this podcast is all about real estate, investing in real estate. I invest in multifamily, and I'm here to show you that regular people can invest in real estate. You don't need to have billions or millions. It's regular people like you and I who can invest in real estate today. So on this podcast, you'll hear from myself, as well as I'll bring different real estate professionals on from around the world to talk about their investing journey, strategies, market insights, or how they got into real estate so you can get started today as well. Stay ready, my friends. Hope you enjoy. All right, Erica, you want to tell the world a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So I live in New York. I'm a New Yorker. I always like to mention that. And I've been an entrepreneur for 15 years. I've had a fashion agency here in the city. We represent brands and wholesale them to retailers. So that's my main job. I would say that I got really interested in real estate about 1 year ago and then just dove head in, started with bigger pockets and then it just snowballed from there.
Okay, so where did you hear about real estate? You said you've been in there for about a year, but
Mhm.
fashion has been your thing, to my understanding, about 15 years. So where did that bug really get into you?
Yeah, so I started to look around and realize that people around me were, buying real estate, and I started to become interested in it. So at first, I was hell bent on buying a condo in New York City, which looking back, it doesn't make exact sense for what I want to do as a real estate investor. And so somebody was like, actually Abel, who I met from Bigger Pockets, a real estate broker, was like, maybe you should look into multifamily. So then I had never really known, it was just not on my radar at all. And I was like, I can do a three family instead of, one unit. I was like, I mean, it made a lot more sense. It cash flowed a little bit. And so then I started just deep diving. I probably what a lot of people do, and I'm still very much at the beginning of my journey, but Googling things, then naturally Bigger Pockets came up, starting to find Instagram, people to follow on Instagram, books to read, podcasts to listen to, and then just slowly became really obsessed with multifamily.
No,
Yeah.
that's amazing. That's amazing. And you said you acquired a 3 unit in New York. How's that been going for you?
Yeah, so I moved from being focused on a condo, and thank God, I'm so happy that I didn't do that because I almost did land on a condo in Lower East Side. And then I switched to multifamily. So I did get a three family in Greenpoint, Brooklyn. I live in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and it's been I closed in July. So it's definitely different than what I thought was going to happen. New York City, I think it's funny because people are like, oh, I only buy 1970 and after, which makes a lot of sense, or 1980 and after. This building is a 1905, which is very typical of New York City. There's a lot of pre-1900 buildings.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So the last owner had been there for 50 years and, it just needed a lot of work. And I think I underestimated how much work it needed. So we ended up doing a full gut on it. And I'm kind of rounding the corner, I would say, on that. New York City is not easy with regulations and that sort of thing. So we've hit some red tape here and there that hindered our progress, but I think we're now on a more seamless path. So
No, that's exciting. So, I mean, first and foremost, you dove headfirst in New York City, right? I
yeah.
hear a lot of people who are afraid to invest in New York because of the red tape and they feel that it's not an investor friendly state. So, what has been some of the major lessons with this three family? It sounds like you had to do a gut. There's a couple things you weren't expecting, but what would you say are the biggest lessons from this that will prepare you for your next property that you'll get?
Yeah, I think that I don't know if it's like the nature of being an entrepreneur. I will just dive into things. I rather just start and then kind of figure things out. I would say I could have been a little bit more realistic with myself in turn, sometimes you just don't want to really think about how, time consuming or financially impactful this is going to be. And so the biggest learning lesson I learned is just planning a little bit more ahead and knowing what's going to be coming because Yeah, in the end, it just took a lot more time and a lot more money than I thought. And I think sometimes, beginning real estate investors can miscalculate things just because they don't have the experience.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I know whenever I got started, I was just happy. I thought a book would, teach me everything I needed to know. And then boom, I got hit in the mouth and I had to adjust. But I agree with you though. That is the best way to that's the best way to learn. So do you have like a specific goal with real estate? Do you know where you want to go, or is there like a cash flow number that you're looking to do or get to?
Yeah, I think so. New York City, that will definitely be just an appreciation play. And then next, it's not going to cash flow that much, a little bit, but I think the next goal for me is to go out of state and to really develop my multifamily portfolio. And yeah, and build up that cash flow because I'm definitely not going to be getting that from this property. So I would like to switch gears and have a mix in my portfolio that would be for appreciation and then for cash flow. I don't have an exact number in mind, but of course, like anyone else, it would be great to at least be able to. I technically do have a W-2, so it'd be great to be less dependent on my W-2 and have a lifestyle that, there's a little bit more freedom, flexibility, financially speaking.
Amazing. So investing out of state and you're living in New York, do you have like a plan on how you want to do that, partnering with people? How do you know who to trust, or what's your step-by-step play in order to get an out-of-state investment?
Yeah. I've also noticed that it's easy to get analysis paralysis when you're looking at out of state because there's articles that have, top 10 cities. So at first I was like Buffalo, then I'm like the Carolinas, and then I'm like, it's like you can really make a case for so many areas that I now have really thought that I would like to do something within driving distance. So
Okay.
not in New York City, but the surrounding areas. I'm thinking Pennsylvania, possibly New York upstate. But yeah, I think I finally have narrowed it down to I would like to be in the vicinity in my home, like home vicinity. I've also developed a really great relationship with my contractor. So it would be, he's made things really easy for me. And I would say a first time gut for a lot of people would be extremely stressful, but working with him, it's been a great relationship. And so it would be good to do something else with him as well.
Amazing. Building beautiful relationships are always amazing, especially in real estate, especially if you're new as well. So I definitely I love that for you. So based off what you say you dove straight in, but you obviously you read some books, did some podcasts, or with bigger pockets. Was there any myths that you debunked whenever you got into real estate? Anything that you weren't really expecting that you thought would be either harder or easier?
I think just the myth of, I feel like a lot of people just think it's outside of their capability. Like that will never happen for me. Like, there was probably a time in my life where I was like, I will never own any real estate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And obviously there's real life factors, but it's it was surprising to me how doable it was. It was just getting started. And I think, you can get started in so many different ways, is what I've learned. So, the burst strategy, obviously you can do fix and flip and you can leverage other people's money. And, there's a lot of different strategies. And so I think the biggest myth that was busted for me was just being able to do it, having the capability to be being able to do it, not being intimidated. So yeah.
No, that's amazing. And you've been in this space for about a year now, you said, and then you did a full gut. I haven't even done a full gut yet because I'm still slightly kind of scared. But is there anything that you would recommend, like a newbie investor who's thinking about getting into real estate in New York? What would be some, two pieces of advice you'd give?
In New York. I don't know. Yeah, I would say just being realistic, doing your research, just making sure that you put yourself into a good financial position, because it's easy to spend a lot of money. Things are very expensive. I made a huge mistake, which was picking expensive tile. So, like I was like, oh, like I don't remember how much it was, but I was like, that sounds cheap. And then times 6 bathrooms, we have 6 bathrooms because there's two, and one.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
it's really expensive. And so I would just say, being really aggressive about your budget, getting quotes from different contractors. In the beginning, I met with three, and you want to, because like the quotes were all over the place. They can, it was, it doesn't seem to be that there's any benchmark. Yeah, so doing your research, being realistic, getting educated on what things actually cost and regulations, how long it's going to take. It took us 30 days to even start because you have to get a permit to start. So I'm just sitting there, you're paying all the carrying costs. And so, yeah, just running the numbers properly.
And then how were you able to determine those numbers, right? You said you spent too much on tile, but you can do a pretty good guesstimate, go to homedepot.com and just figure out how much you need. But how are you trying to determine exactly how much it would cost to fix up this property?
I think in the beginning when I drew up the budget, it just wasn't really realistic. Like thing, I was like, oh, we can just do the cheapest here. But then you're like, do you really like everything is budgeted at the cheapest? And it's like, do you really want to, is that realistic? Like do you want the cheapest toilet? Like, because when you get to do it, I guess what came up for me is like, this is going to be a long-term hold, and I can't be as cheap as possible because you also don't want to deal with things breaking. And not that I need the nicest marble bathtub or anything like that, but just being realistic for what that property is for. It's a rental property that needs to be durable, but it doesn't need to have like the nicest of the nice, I would say. And I started to kind of do it like I was doing it for myself, and it's not for me. It doesn't matter what I like, on a taste level. Just making it comfortable, functional, sturdy is probably my biggest what I'm focused on.
No, amazing. And you said you just got into real estate, but I also see that you are the founder of the New York Women's Real Estate Investors.
Yeah.
Why did you do that, and how has it impacted your community when it comes to real estate and investing for the future?
Yeah, so one of the things that I found really helpful is just talking to other people. And so about real estate and their experience, because it is, you just learn so much from people with experience. And so I started to talk to, I can't even remember, I think I met one woman in New York City who was in real estate, just also like me, just starting out. And then she was like, let's get dinner. So we were like, okay. And then all of a sudden, this like group text became 5 people, 10 people. Now it's a WhatsApp group. Now it's 55 people. People just start adding women who were interested in real estate. I think for me in multifamily, when I go to meetings, it's almost all men in the past. I have like pictures where it's so funny. It's just all men in in commercial multifamily. I don't know why. It just seems to be male dominated. Because if you go to an Airbnb meeting, honestly, predominantly it's women. So, I mean, it's men. So for me, it was just kind of finding a network of people that were on a similar path as me. And it just, yeah, snowballed into women who were interested in speaking to each other about their experiences. Our first meetup was at a bar. And so, yeah, and everyone was so excited because when you talk about real estate to friends who don't care, like, yeah, it's not as fun, right? But when you speak to someone who's also passionate about it, like I could probably speak to you about it for hours,
Oh yeah.
so.
No, that's amazing. And I will say, like, the communities, meetups, that's so important just because, I found at least two deals just from networking. So, I think you did a great thing there, especially, all women, just continue to build that because I will say it's a predominantly men's space, at least in the spaces I'm in, and I need to get in more places like you. So I definitely think you're doing a great thing. So I know financial independence is very important for you. I know you have a very successful fashion business as well. So why is financial independence important for you and the lifestyle that you want to get to?
Yeah, I started my fashion company 15 years ago. So when I was a lot younger, and I kind of just bullishly kept going, right? Like, and then you think more as you get older about your future. You're like, I don't know how long I'm going to do this. I'd love to one day sell my company, but at the end of the day, you just don't know. And now, I'm on a smoother path with my company, but it's definitely a volatile industry, right? So like I've had good years, I've had bad years, I've had good days, I've had bad days, like so it's like it's a roller coaster. It can be up and down. You get one order canceled and you're like, "Oh my God, my life is over." So I think for me, it's just finding stability and being able, with the money that I save from my business is what I'm using to invest in real estate because it's a more steady asset. And I've talked about this before, but when I was really young and just started my company, I had gone to Charles Schwab because I was like, oh, this is where you go when you need to talk to someone about how to plan for your future. And it's just funny because the advice that I got, I talked to him, I was like, I just made a bunch of money with my company. I want to know what to do with it. And he was like, asked me a lot of questions. He's like, well, you're making more money with yourself, like percentage wise, than I would make for you. So just keep doing what you're doing. So so I did it. I walked out of Charles Schwab with no portfolio, nothing started. And I did that for years, like just walking around with keeping the money in my business, reinvesting it. But of course, like you're wrong sometimes, right? So I've made missteps, I've lost money, and looking back, I'm like, I really should have started something solid as an investment strategy for myself. And so that's why I'm very passionate about planning for the future and trying to get to a place of, yeah, financial independence, financial freedom through investing and not just my company.
That's amazing. I think there's a lot of entrepreneurs who are looking at this, young, old, intermediate, whatever they may be, and they are inspired by you. And one of the things
Mm.
with this podcast is, I want to show people that you don't need to have billions and millions of dollars in order to get started. You don't need to be in real estate for multiple years. You've been in for 1 year. You already have a three family unit. You've learned a lot with investing with that. Excuse me. You've learned a lot with that, and now you know so much more than someone who has never done it when it comes to permits, what to budget for, and things like that. And you also mentioned about analysis paralysis. So what three pieces of advice on actionable steps would you give someone today in order to get started?
I think number one, just educate. So there's so much education out there, even for businesses. Like on a separate thing, I didn't have a lot of this kind of free information out there when I was starting my company. Now there's so many people to follow on Instagram, podcasts. Some of the things that I really liked was finding communities. So there is something called Wire, which is the Women Investing in Real Estate, which is a national community by two women, Grace and Amelia. That was awesome. So yeah, books, podcasts, educating yourself. And then the other thing is I did a lot of networking calls, which I always find that I know it's like such a cringy term, but I would just even listening to people on podcasts, they always give their information at the end. And I would always take them up on contacting them. I feel like a lot of people don't, but like I was listening to Hunter Thompson's podcast, and then there was a woman who was in multifamily, and I was like, oh, interesting, because there's not that many women. And so I contacted her and we had a great meeting. So there was a time where I was doing like 2 or 3 networking calls a week, just talking to people who I wanted to aspire to be like. So those are two of my tips. And then the third is just, you know, posting on social media. I hate to say it's so cliche, but I don't even have that many followers at all. I think I have 500, and I've learned it doesn't matter how many follow. It's very true. I mean, it doesn't, right? But like just getting out there and talking and like saying what you're doing, people have reached out to me. I've reached out to people on Facebook and Instagram predominantly and made some great connections. Like right now, tomorrow, I'm going to go drive to a space with a private money lender that I met on Instagram. And he's now a friend of mine. But yeah, so I would say, educating yourself, reaching out to people, and posting on social media.
That's important. We got here because of social media.
Yeah,
So,
exactly, exactly. We're
yeah, so,
social
but with
media.
that, we're going to move on to the next segment of the show where I ask everyone the same three questions. All right. The first question: what are two books you recommend the aspiring investor to read?
Okay, so for me specifically, it was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. it definitely impacted me. I was listening to it on a walk and yeah, I just like kept walking because I was like these are such a interesting concepts that no one talks to. And I also feel like it's a book that's on everyone's shelf and it takes them years to pick up and read. So I remember it was on my parents' shelf. I just never read it when I was younger. And the second book was The Multifamily Millionaire by Brandon Turner, part one and part two. I've read almost every multifamily book out there. And I feel like that one was the most, sorry, there's sirens outside my door. You might, but that book was the most, it just had a lot of real actionable advice and it described everything so clearly. I think it was a great book.
No, I love that. Actually, that's one of my favorite books too. It makes it, simple for anyone to read. So, but second question, what has been the most impactful speech or lesson that's helped you in your career?
So there was just this one thing that I always think about, and I don't know well, there's always one thing that there's one story that I always think about. So when I was younger, I used to bartend parties in people's private homes. And so they'd be like events or functions or meetings. And so one time I bartended this party that was for an author and it was for her book launch. She was a poet. And I remember that I didn't really even drink. So like it is funny because I didn't really know what I was making people or how it tasted. I'm sure it was terrible. And so I put all of the wine glasses in the dishwasher at the end. And these were nice, like really nice, expensive wine glasses. And at the end, when I ran the dishwasher and I opened it up, every single one of them was broken. I didn't know you're not supposed to put really, I was like a college kid. I was 18 years old. I had no idea that these were really nice and expensive. And I was in Gramercy Park, one of the most expensive areas at her apartment. And I just opened it up and every single wine glass was broken. And I was like, I should just leave. Like, I should just close, just walk out. Like, I was mortified and so scared because I had like thousands of dollars of glasses. And then at the end, I stayed, but I was so nervous. And she called me into her room and I went in and she's like, thank you so much. I thought she was going to yell at me. And she gave me a $600 tip. And it was, I know. And it was crazy because like I was like, I just ruined your party, you know what I mean? And I just remember it just always sticks with me. And I have a really bad memory. It always sticks with me, just like the kindness that she showed me, because I was like, this is awesome. It was just such like a nice, I think she almost like felt bad for me. Yeah. So that was probably one of the most impactful like moments when I was working.
Be kind for sure. And the last question is, if you can have dinner with anyone dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I mean, anyone who knows me knows this. It's Oprah. Yeah, for sure. It's Oprah. I have been a fan of Oprah since I was a kid. That woman raised me like every day after school at 4 o'clock. I would watch Oprah. Like I've learned everything I know. I think she's the most empathetic person that has ever existed. Yeah, I'm a huge Oprah fan.
No, amazing, amazing. Thank you for that. Well, how can the audience reach out to you? What can we help you out with? Shoot.
Yeah, you can reach out to me on Instagram. So it's just Erica, Erica dot Kiang, Kiang. And that's probably the best way.
Is there any needs that you have that we can possibly provide for you if someone's reaching out to you?
I just love to collaborate with other people. If anyone's in New York City and wants to join our New York City women's group, we always love having people come. They're free meetups. So yeah, I'd love that.
Well, thank you so much for joining the show, and I hope to have you back again sometime soon.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks.
Thanks for tuning in to the Stay Ready Real Estate Podcast, where we stay ready so you don't have to get ready. If you enjoyed this podcast today, please give me a like and subscribe and tune in next week so you can hear another one. If you ever want to reach out to me, I'd love to talk to you about real estate. If you're ever interested in any of the deals that I have, I'm based here in Central Florida. Reach out. My information is below. Hope to see you next week. Stay ready, my friend.